Well, it's the big show. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Danny Show. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, giving you commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. And as you can see by that little intro, today is the day of the giant, the big show, with the weapon of mass destruction. So, as usual, if I can come up with some, I always try to give reviews on my favorite matches that those particular wrestlers did. So today, I'm going to do my top 10 review on my favorite matches from The Big Show, aka Paul White, because there's no more BS. We all know what that means. It's not a swear, it's for no more Big Show. But let's get down to business. Starting at number 10, we have The Big Show versus Floyd Money Mayweather at WrestleMania 24. My apologies. I get Orlando mixed up with Miami, Florida. My apologies. But WrestleMania 24. This match had been built up for a while, and it finally came to we have a giant wrestler in WWE, his domain, the Big Show, and then you have famous boxer, undefeated boxer to this very day, Floyd Money Mayweather. And it was supposed to be an interesting build up because keep in mind you have the Big Show, who is a giant, an unstoppable giant, hard to beat in WWE, and you have the undefeated Floyd Mayweather, who is 2 feet smaller than the Big Show. It looked on paper like the Big Show was going to win this thing, but somehow, well, thanks to a low blow and a couple of brass nuts, Floyd Money Mayweather won that match. But the Big Show had a great showing. Such a great showing that Floyd Money Mayweather's handlers kept saying some of the most hilarious things, such as, he can't be doing that. He can't be doing that. Who can forget that? Fun fact, one of the members of the early Nexus was part of Money Mayweather's crew, if you pay close attention. Now, moving on to number 9, we have another WrestleMania match, which was the event that I confused my first one with, and that is WrestleMania 28 in Miami, Florida. The WrestleMania 24 took place in Orlando, but WrestleMania 28 took place in Miami. And this was a match between the Big Show and Cody Rhodes. This was Big Show's redemption match because, as shown in my number 10 pick, Big Show did not have a lot of good history when it came to WrestleMania. The embarrassment of WrestleMania 24, the only couple of matches that the Big Show has won were won due to the assistance of Kane at WrestleMania 27 as well as WrestleMania 22. And where else did he win besides then? Other than that, no wins for the Big Show. Everything else was defeat and embarrassment, including the sumo match at WrestleMania Hollywood. But this match was a redemption match because 2 things happened that night. One, he defeated Cody Rhodes. Two, he did it. No, number one was he defeated Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. Number two, he won his first ever Intercontinental Championship at that event. And during his victory, you could see the feeling of relief, happiness, and just overwhelming emotions. You could see it in his face. He was emotional to finally be able to win a match at WrestleMania and win a championship there. At number 8, speaking of Miami, we have at number 8 The Rock versus The Big Show at No Way Out 2000 in the new millennium. To me, this match was, even though the match was somewhat 10 minutes, it was pretty interesting, pretty even, and it had its epicness to it. Not to mention, as always, they always fought in the crowd. I always loved that about the Attitude Era, that they fought in the crowd a lot. Plus, there was no virus at the time. But either way, it was a great match, great showing by both men. It was a controversial ending from a scripted storyline standpoint. However, nonetheless, a good match for the Big Show and to go face to face with the Great One. Speaking of The Rock, quick question. Does Joe Rogan deserve a rock bottom and a people's elbow? I can't say why I asked that question. Some of you do, but I don't want to get too political. Speaking of controversial endings, this brings me to number 7, and that is Big Show's first match with Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series 2002. The match was a bit over 5 minutes long, but it was still very interesting. It was a great storytelling. Brock Lesnar had a great showing, and he was able to suplex and F5 the Big Show. But thanks to Paul Heyman, who betrayed Brock Lesnar for the first time. The second time was recently at this year's Royal Rumble, the same Royal Rumble that I really enjoyed covering and reviewing. But either way, it was a controversial ending for the Big Show. However, the Big Show won that match and he won his second WWE Championship at Survivor Series 2002, even though it was from crooked help from Paul Heyman. We're starting to see a pattern of the Big Show winning matches crookedly. Paul Heyman also helped Big Show win the ECW Championship in 2006 with his match against RVD. Not that Big Show needed help because he dominated that match against RVD, winning the ECW title. But moving on. In 1999, this is number 6. We have The Big Show versus one of my all-time favorites outside of The Rock, The Undertaker. And this was a match that took place June the 7th, 1999. It was short, but what made this match so special is that he was able to overpower The Undertaker, which not many people can do. And on top of that, most people enjoyed it because at the time The Undertaker was a heel and the match was for the WWF Championship. Then it was known as the WF. It was for the WWF Championship, but the match did not have a conclusion. Part of that reason, mainly because the Big Show, in an amazing highlight, choke slammed The Undertaker right through the ring. And the match was called off. And then you had the Acolytes, the APA as they would be called later, Farouk and Bradshaw come out, and they got it from the Big Show too. But the fact that Big Show had that OMG moment, choke slamming The Undertaker, puts that match on this list. At number 5, we have Big Show winning the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal at WrestleMania 31. As I mentioned earlier, Big Show does not have the best track record for WrestleManias unless he's in a tag match with someone like Kane helping him. However, this was a match that Big Show won all by himself. It was a battle royal for the annual Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. This was the second one. Big Show was a part of the first one, but he would be body slammed over the top rope by Cesaro for Cesaro to win that Memorial Battle Royal, the first ever one at WrestleMania 30. However, Big Show won, last eliminating Sandow, Miz's stunt double. And there's no greater fit for an Andre the Giant winner than the Big Show. At number 4, we have the Big Show at Survivor Series 1999 in a triple threat match against The Rock and Triple H. Now, Big Show had been in action earlier that night, taking on all of Boss Man's teammates, including himself, the Boss Man, Viscera, A-Train, and someone else. And he overpowered all of them. Even Viscera, who was almost the same height as the Big Show, God rest his soul. But it was not the end of Big Show's night. Earlier that night, Stone Cold Steve Austin had been ran over by whom we later discovered was Rikishi, but the master behind this whole thing was Triple H himself. That's obvious. I mean, it was Triple H said it best. You couldn't see the truth when it was staring you right in the face. But Triple H strategized so that it could be him and The Rock, but it was determined to be a triple threat match, as Mr. McMahon determined it to be. So, who was the next pick? The Big Show. And the Big Show showed himself awesome. He was able to do a flying double clothesline on The Rock and Triple H. And later on in the match would give Triple H the show-stopping chokeslam, winning his first ever WWF Championship. And of course, what makes this match extra special is that it was dedicated to his late father. At number 3, we have Big Show versus Mark Henry at Vengeance 2011. Now, this was a rivalry of the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object, as they like to say. Mark Henry had put Big Show out of action with an ankle injury, as he did to the great Khali, Vladimir Kozlov, and even Kane. And at the time, Mark Henry had started what was called the Hall of Pain. He had went from being a babyface happy guy to his original dangerous heelish self, monster heel, should I say. And when Big Show finally came back from injury at Money in the Bank 2011, he came back not only looking to take Mark Henry out, but to win the World Heavyweight Championship from him, because at the time Mark Henry was world champion. So at Vengeance 2011, the match was very epic. We saw the best of both sides. We saw the best of the Big Show, which with his choke slam, two choke slams, might I add. One being when he hoisted Mark Henry from the top rope. We also saw the best of Mark Henry with his world's strongest slam. And what made this match a highlight was that, as epic as it was for both men, the highlight came when Mark Henry superplexed the Big Show through the ring, breaking the entire ring. Fun fact, well, I don't know if this is something you want to mention on a guy's birthday, but another fun fact is the Big Show was a part of another in-ring implosion. Mark Henry was the second one. The first one was Brock Lesnar on an episode of SmackDown in the summer of 2003. An episode that I am proud to say at 8 years old I saw. So, an OMG move that caused the ring to implode makes this match number 3. At number 2, we have from WCW, The Big Show versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and The Big Show's debut match at Halloween Havoc 1995. And this was a match that would give Big Show one of the biggest credits. He's been WWE Champion, World Heavyweight Champion, and he's been ECW Champion. But this was the night where he would win his first WCW championship. And it started off, before it got into wrestling, there was a bit of an entertainment segment where they wrestled with monster trucks together. And there was a moment where we didn't expect to see Big Show come back. But somehow the Giant, as he was known at the time, and for whatever reason, they put an angle to make him the son of Andre the Giant himself. Okay, but interesting enough, moving forward, the match was very great. It started off entertaining with monster trucks and things, and then we got to the action. That match would be the match where Big Show would win, defeating Hulk Hogan in his first match in WCW to win a championship. And he's one of the only men to have done that. Another person that I've known to win a championship on his debut match was Christian. Moving on to number 1. This is one of my all-time favorite Big Show matches, and it was a match against Sheamus at Hell in a Cell 2012. Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, Halloween Havoc 1999 is still on YouTube. You can check that out. The Rock versus Big Show No Way Out. You can find that on YouTube. The match with him and the Undertaker can be found on YouTube also. I believe it's under the Brother of Destruction 22 something channel. Great stuff. You can find those matches there. You gotta look those matches up. Also, Mark Henry and Big Show at Vengeance still on YouTube. WWE has not taken these matches down. So if you want to see some classics from the Big Show, check these guys out. But definitely, this is my number one pick, and that is the Big Show versus Sheamus, the Celtic Warrior, back when he was used in a high quality matter. He was the world heavyweight champion, Sheamus, I'm speaking of, and he put on a great showing. He was able to use the Celtic, not the Celtic Cross, White Noise, that's what it's called. A move that used to be called the Celtic Cross when Finlay used it. But either way, great match. Sheamus was the first person to kick out of the KO punch, but it wouldn't stop him. Even he kicked out of a KO punch and a choke slam. And he went for a bro kick of his own, the Sheamus. But as we found out on an episode of SmackDown, Big Show's KO punch has more force than the bro kick. And that's why it took two of them and a choke slam for Big Show to win a World Heavyweight Championship in Hell in a Cell, not in the actual match, but at the event Hell in a Cell in 2012. 2012, dare I say, was a pretty darn good year for the Big Show. So, what are your favorite Big Show matches? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, and that's all the time I got for you today. And later on this week, another Black History Wrestling trivia coming your way. See you then. Have a good week.